We're going to get the program started here. My name is Jim Hollifield, and I'm the director of the Tower Center, professor here at SMU. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all again to the beautiful SMU campus, where the parking is absolutely perfect. No issues with parking today. But we're up here in the Law Quad. I'm happy to be hosting this in the SMU Law School. Probably a few of you in here may be graduates of the SMU Law School. So welcome back. And it is my pleasure to introduce this program, which is part of our Sun and Star lecture series. I'm really surprised there's so much interest in Taiwan and the Taiwan Straits and China. I know we've been trying very hard in this country to pivot to Asia, where most of the action is supposed to be, but we keep getting distracted in places like Ukraine and the Middle East. But today we're going to talk about Taiwan, we're going to talk about China, we're going to talk about Asia, and it's nice to see so many great friends of the Tower Center here. I start naming people, I'll never get a chance to stop, so I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to welcome to the podium. I want you to join me in welcoming to the podium my colleague, who is the great director of our Sun and Star program, a professor here at SMU, Takayuchi Sensei. Come to the podium.
Good afternoon. I'm Hiroshi Takeuchi. Thank you very much for coming. Before starting, Sun Star program has 3 events for next month. And then on March 1st, on Friday, not in SMU campus, but nearby at the Highland Dallas, we have a symposium hosted by Japan Metal Society Dallas Fort Worth, and Japan Current Symposium from 12 o'clock to 3:30. This year's theme is sustainability and urban development in the context of U.S.-Japan business relations. And also March 5th, Tuesday from 6 to 7:15, we have an event at the SMU campus on Asian American, and inviting Chris Su of Emory University, and he's talking about his most recent book, The Allure of Empire, American Encounters with Asians in the Age of Trans-Pacific Expansion and Exclusion. And so that will be March 5th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. And then on March 25th and 26th, we have our biggest annual event, Sun Star Symposium on Japan and East Asia. That will be March 25th, Monday evening with a keynote dinner, and March 26th, the whole day from 10 to 3:30 at the SMU campus. You will see those symposia on Tower Center website. This year's Sun Star Symposium theme is the rise of authoritarianism and U.S.-Japan relations. So a very timely topic, and we have a very interesting speakers. Well, today I'm really delighted to have 2 speakers, my old friends, Carl Ho from UTD and Yao-Yuan from University of St. Thomas in Houston. We have worked together for a long time. Also, we have been friends for a long time, so we talk a lot. And then, of course, this January, when I met Yao, especially Dr. Ye, in the conference, that happened to be the following day of the Taiwanese election. And we talked about elections much more than maybe like our papers. Which we had to talk about, we are supposed to talk about. I would not I will not read their bios. It's a very extensive, but I'd like to start with brief introduction of the Taiwanese elections, the significance of Taiwanese elections. First of all, it's not just a presidential election. We tend to focus on the presidential election, but it's also have a legislative election, and then outcomes were very interesting. They will talk about it. Secondly, Taiwanese presidential election is like similar to the United States in the sense that they have both like a president and vice president candidates are running mates, and then like they elect a pair of the presidential candidate and vice presidential candidate. Secondly, also Taiwanese presidential system is a presidential system with the prime minister. It's different from the United States. And then prime minister is appointed by president, not like elected by legislature. Finally, Taiwanese election is the first election of this election year. So it took place in January, and then so far at least like I know, we have 3 important elections. So the one Taiwan in January, and then this month we already have a Pakistani election as well as the Indonesian election. Next month, Russia has a presidential election, and that's interesting. And then also in April, South Korea has a legislative election, and then Mexico has an election in the middle of the year, and then like, toward the end, we have, as we know, American election. And also perhaps like in the UK may have election. Prime Minister Sunak may call a snap election toward the end of the year. And then also, interestingly, there is a Japanese LDP presidential election, a party president's election, and we'll see that the current Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will be re-elected for party president. And that's a parliamentary system with LDP majority, so which means if like he's not re-elected for a party president, then like he may have to step down. So a lot of things going on, a lot of elections going on, not just in the United States, all over the world. So, but Taiwan's one is very the first one, and then also very important. I usually say that the first and last would be probably most important. So the Taiwanese election and then the U.S. election might be more important than others, but it's very important. And then I'm very happy to have 2 the distinguished speakers who know about the Taiwanese election and Taiwanese politics very well. Actually, Dr. Ho actually went to Taiwan during the election, and then he observed the election, and then Dr. Ye knows a lot of the people in Taiwanese politics, and he interviewed a lot. So they are very, very knowledgeable. So please join me for 2 distinguished speakers.
I'd like to walk around if it's the sound would be different. I want to thank you, Dr. Takuchi, again for invitation. And my name is Carl Ho. I'm at the University of Texas at Dallas. And again, I want to thank Jim, Dr. Holyfield, and also Dr. Takuchi, and to allow me to give you this opportunity to share with you what I observed. And before doing that, I have some of my colleagues with our new Taiwan project and in UT Dallas. And can you please stand and to show how big UT Dallas is? Come on, Sue. Yeah, Professor Jenny Wu and also Julie Hong. And thank you again, thank you. And Dr. Wu is going to teach Taiwan a course starting this semester called the State and Society in Taiwan, and also she will teach professional Mandarin and Huayu courses too. I think quickly, let me introduce, I think that this is a quick bio of me, and I think you can see on my bio, there'll be some more, but I think I will skip this. But most importantly, and why this election is important. And I wish I had more time, but I think I'll have to observe my time now here being 15 minutes specifically. And why this is important? Because this will determine and how likely or how secure the region and also the Taiwan Strait and regarding multiple populations. And of course, Taiwan and of course, Southern China and Hong Kong, this is where I'm from. And also the Japanese population is very close vicinity. Yesterday, last night, we have a very great conversation. Japan is really not away that much. This is why this election will be important to all these populations. So I have multiple things and working on these elections, but this one specifically, I want to call this structural change in 2024 elections, structural changes. So there are a few things I want to particularly bring to your attention, and you may have seen in the news and seen on the internet, and how much we can see these structural changes, which is like the bottom of the iceberg. In the iceberg, we see the new president and the new Congress coming up. But what I want to point out is something is more under the water. And so my point here is, number one, the party system is becoming different. And we know if you're a political science student and you study a party system, which is coming from the Duverger's law, which is mathematically determining the number of parties by the electoral system. So in the American case, we have a two-party system because we have a single-member district, and not likely there'll be a third party coming up. And Taiwanese system is very similar, except that we have a part called proportional representation, allowing some parties to get some seats. So in the past, these third parties or small parties, they cannot do much. And in influencing the two major parties in the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, and also Kuomintang, KMT. And I will give a little bit more distribution later, but now we see that it's likely there could be a breaking the moment coming up. So, but you may argue that, hey, we have the third parties like a People Power Party or People First Party. They're like a third parties, but I believe that this one could be different. But it's still in the hypothesis stage. So I want you to maybe give me some inputs. What do you think? And we have a dialogue after. And another thing is, we see this what we call this issue structure change. So for the last 20-something years, since 1996, and the Taiwan elections are very much governed, I would say dictated by the issue, how much it should be related to Taiwan, whether Taiwan should ultimately or one day unify with China, or Taiwan should declare its own independence, which is on the label of Taiwan Republic or Taiwan instead of anything with China. So that is the major issue that basically defines the Taiwanese politics. But I believe that this election is giving a strong sign, and this may not be the case anymore. So, so this is me, and I want to show some pictures, and to show that I was really there. So, so this is my picture, copyrighted by Caro, and I visited multiple headquarters of the different parties. So the first one, and actually it's not the first one, it's the last one. This is the famous Kuomintang's headquarters of elections. So why is it called famous? Because this is this party reigned over Taiwan for almost over half a decade, and now this is the headquarters in New Taipei. And if you look closer, and it's made of makeshift board buildings. This is a temporary building on the parking lot. And so this is the the delegation from overseas Hong Kong and observers. So they don't have a formal bathroom or restrooms, and they're basically mobile toilets outside, and everything is so makeshift. So this is some good observation, and I believe that this is a really good site, and why KMT could not make it this time. Now, this is basically the front door, and everything's makeshift, and I have to admit that this is early in the morning. There's not much and traffic and little traffic, and we are basically the biggest group. The other one is this one is you took a peek already at the DPP. This one is the third party is called the Taiwan People Party, and they do not have much structure or institutions, but this is like Banqiao is one of the headquarters and in New Taipei. So I want to show more pictures, but there's inside that there's still a lot of traffic, and lots of family bringing young kids as middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students, lots of volunteers, etc. The third one is, and this is I suppose it's a movie, and this is one of the I think it's the big. You can see more traffic and a lot of really well decorated games and posters. They have all jackets, and I think the main theme for this is still baseball, because I think baseball is big in Taiwan, and I think they made it really well. And in terms of the outfit. So the two players, they call themselves the MVP, and this is the presidential candidate and the vice president candidate, Kim Shao. She was the ambassador to U.S. And so this is my pictures. I want to show some movies, but I do not have time. Now I think I will quickly go for some data, and maybe we can start from 2016. So this is the presidential election. 2016, the DPP's candidate then Tai and won big time, and now KMT made it back really with big splash too, and you can see almost like a blue wave. And I think I can basically say it's a blue wave in 2018. What is 2018? It's not the presidential election. It's primarily the local election for the mayors, just like the governors in the U.S. The KMT, the blue color, made it back. And so this is 2020, which is what I call in my other talks called a critical election. The critical election also changed the party system to start with. Now, the DPP came back because of the Hong Kong factor. There's another talk. The Hong Kong factor really drove the Green and also DPP to the main stage. They occupied the major institutions, executive branch, legislative branch, for the last 4 years. Now 2022 is still see a comeback for the mayoral or local elections. So this is 2022. You can see the blue is not really the overwhelming blue wave, but the blue made it back, and for the local offices. Now what is 2024? So this is 2024, and DPP still made it, but it's no longer like a 2016 or 2020, and they could not take the majority, but they only took a 40%, slightly over 40% plurality, and in the presidential election. So this is giving more detail, and this website giving more detail. And the three candidates, William Lai and LAI, is the DPP candidate now. The current president is President-Elect. And also Ho, who's representing KMT. And Ho is very interesting. And I know the color may not be doing well. I call it like a Tiffany color between the blue and green. And a different color did not make it to any of this on the map. And but they did have some a good support through the proportional representation, won 8 seats in the parliament. Okay, so this is another picture showing a little bit more. You can see the general picture and how individuals and get better support. The eastern part of the island is always a stronghold of the KMT. You can see that the darker blue on the right hand side, And of course, the highly populated Taipei city in the north, and seeing some blue and also some to the north. But interestingly, you can see the central part called Taichung, and you can see some light blue coming up. So so the green DPP on the left-hand side, the darker blue KMT on the right-hand side, middle is the TPP, Taiwan's People's Party. And so now this is a very interesting note about the parliamentary elections. Compared to presidential election, the blue is doing much better. And so this is 2022 locally. Supposedly this should be translated to the presidential votes, but it ended up did not happen that way. So comparatively, and this is the parliamentary election or the Legislative Yuan election turned out like a 52 seats for the KMT, 51 seats for the TPP, a total of 113 seats. So there are 10 seats, and 8 of them from the TPP, which is the like a middle of the road party. This is what I want to comment about, and 2 seats from the local people, indigenous people, but they're generally blue. So you can count a total of 54 seats out of 113 to support the blue or KMT or the opposition. So so this is in the middle, and the 8 seats from the TPP. So these TPP new Congress members, will they become what we call the critical minority, and whether they can side with the KMT to make a majority, or they still can side with TPP to make a majority too, because the TPP 51 plus 8 is 59, still can have a slim, very thin a majority for the policies or the bills to go get passed. But if it sides with the blue, and that means there's no chance at all the government bills and to get passed, that become law. So this is something I observe. But one thing I do not particularly optimistic about the opposition KMT is, number one, this election is primarily driven by what I call the expanded middle segment of the electorate. So why do I say that? So in the past, you can see that either the blue or the green, they can take some majority, getting support from the light green, light blue to swing, to change, to get to the majority. But now we do not see such a majority, even combining what I call a TPP. And I really doubt the TPP can count as either blue or green. There's a strong reason before that. I will talk a little bit. Generally speaking, and this segment or the middle segment they are apprehensive of the major parties, particularly the green and the blue. They don't want to side with them. So they are specifically coming out because they are opposed to both parties. So is there a Hong Kong factor like a 2020? And most of the observers, including myself, I do not see any or much Hong Kong influence in this election. And in the past, in 2020, there could be some sympathy toward the Hong Kong posters and also the pro-democracy supporters, and it's basically totally absent. I would say totally absent in this election. And but what about Taiwan and voters? About the China factor or the perception of China. So I would say that they're generally indifferent to whether China is coming in or to intervene in this election. They are more concerned about their local issues, and I will talk more about that. So let me go back to the structural change that I want to summarize here because of time. And number one, we can see that about 30%, maybe even more, new voters, I call it new voters, they show disdain of both blue and green camps, primarily KMT and DPP. Their new identity is we are opposed to the major parties. Why that is so? And And I observe in person the comparative rallies, which is very common in Taiwan elections. A good things to observe, to go there. It's like carnivals, like parties, but this time it's very different. The TPP rallies are not mobilized, are not highly you see a lot of big transportation bus or transportation plan to bring people from the south, from the middle, from the central part, but they are all voluntary. They're flooding the rally sites particularly in Taipei by hundreds of thousands. So look, the report suggests that could be 400, even 500,000 supporters of the TPP flooding the area, the plaza in front of the presidential house. So this is the effect of Ko Wen-je, which is a candidate and also one of the Wang Guochang is one of the former People Power Party. So what are the implications? I want to cut short and come to this. And would there be a third party coming to what we call a break the mold moment? And I believe there could be something different from the past. It's no longer the minor third party. And so my conclusion is TPP and KMT, either they have to reform and they could be replaced. So Dr. Ye may come up with talk more about that, but I believe that the both parties, they must face some changes, not just because of the code, not just because of the party, but primarily it's a bottom-up reform drive and changing the issue structure, changing the party system structure. They want something which is not dictated by the China factor, not dictated by the national identity. So maybe I can do more, talk more, and during Q&A time. Thank you very much. Yep.
All right, howdy. How you guys doing? My name is Yao-Yuan. I'm a professor of international relations at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And this time, thanks to James and Hiroki for inviting me come up to Dallas. I've only been to Dallas for special occasions, especially oftentimes Dr. Ho will be inviting me to give a talk or actually participate in his panels in UT Dallas. So that's how I got to Dallas, but most of the time I'm based in Houston, you know. And I'm the kind of a counterpart person who's doing this Taiwan conference, Taiwan seminars, Taiwan symposium in Houston. So when I had this type of event, I usually know about 90% of the audience in Houston. Here in Dallas, I'm like, who are you? It's kind of interesting because it's only about 3.5 hours apart from each other. So, you know, Dr. Ho actually have built up all the informations that you need to know about Taiwan's elections. So my part would be to complement what he haven't really talked about, especially on 3 different domains. The first thing I want to talk about is what is the critical issues of this election, including the presidential elections and the legislative elections. Second, how will the United States respond to the electoral outcomes in Taiwan? Third, how will Beijing respond to this situation? So I want to start from the first one. I think it was May in 2023. I was invited to Taiwan and give a press conference on what's the critical issues about the elections forthcoming in 2023. At that time, I was telling all the media that first, the cross-border relations is not going to be the key issue of these elections, which is true because the most important issue that we have seen on the news media across from 3 different political camps are first, affordable housing. Second, low wages for young people. Third, scandals. Actually, I don't know which one should be prioritized, but let's me put the scandal on the bottom. Scandal about like plagiarisms in their master thesis, or scandal about the property they own, they fail to pay taxes, or they fail to fire this is actually something that's occupying the national land. But anyway, there's a lot of interesting story over there. So that's the key issues in this election. China factor doesn't really play a role because first, most of the people in Taiwan will prefer status quo. And the so-called status quo is actually very straightforward: peace between the cross strait, which means Beijing hasn't really attacked Taiwan and Taiwan hasn't really declared independence. And at the same time, the United States continue its implicit security commitment to Taiwan. And by far, even though China has slowly tried to mobilize, try to blur out what do we really mean by the median line of the strait, and also trying to more aggressively insert their military will into the strait. But by far, the peace hasn't been changed. And so the point is, to the majority of Taiwanese voters, if peace has been maintained by far, even though the State Department says the war could happen in 2027, or it could be happening in 2034 to 35, or like the last time when Xi Jinping came to the San Francisco and told Biden face to face that, no, I don't have a plan to invade Taiwan. Nobody really know what will happen. And by far, the peace is something that we have seen. And we cherish our life and nothing has changed. Business continues. U.S. China is in competition, so we have to switch our manufacturers back to maybe to Vietnam, maybe to India. But that's the global economic structural change of a supply chain. It may not be associated directly to the U.S.-China competitions. So business continues, life continues. Why should I care about cross-border relations? And that's exactly how each party anchored on their campaigning platform in these elections. It's not about cross relations because the median voter, and especially independent voters, do not really care too much about the cross relations anymore. Of course, if we're talking about those diehard deep blue supporter, deep green supporter, we're talking about DPP or KMT supporter. Well, they still care about cross relation, but it actually doesn't really matter how the party actually talk about. They're still going to vote for the party. So you can see all three parties leaning to a status quo and trying to say they're the guardians of ROC, which is very, very weird from the DPP's perspective, which could be justifiable from KMT's perspective. And the TPP, the Ko-Wen-je, is trying to swing in between. If you see his party platform on cross-strait relations, it's basically like 50% of DPP and 50% of KMT combined divided by 2. That's it. That's his party platform on cross-strait relations. But it works. It works. So that's the first issue, and that's exactly why. DPP still holds the president's seat, but one of these is attributed by these three candidates in scenario. And of course, if you told me if Ko-Wen-je were to cooperate with Hou Yu-yi, with KMT, does that mean that combination will actually win the elections? Not necessarily. It depends on who runs first. And actually, it doesn't really matter who runs as presidential candidate. They might still lose because a KMT supporter doesn't want to see Ko-Wen-je to be the presidential candidate. So as Ko-Wen-je supporter don't want to see Hou Yu-yi to be the presidential candidate. And they will actually not to go to vote instead of voting. They're not going to vote for DPP, but then they will choose not to go to vote. So as a result, if we try to calculate the basic compensations of voters in Taiwan, it's about 40% of DPP supporter, 40% of KMT supporter. It's about 20% of the independent voters. And this time, especially on presidential issue, the 20% of independent voters still prefer the current structure of cross-strait relations dictated by DPP. So that's why DPP has more vote, not majority, but more vote than KMT and the TPP's candidate. So that's the elections of the presidential, of the president in Taiwan this year. Speaking of how the United States will react to, I think the William Lai has stated this numerous times that he will actually just continue Taiwan's foreign policy, which means pro-U.S. Well, I won't say anti-China, but not really cooperating with China, and still being a peach. I mean, what's a better term? I mean, like a nasty box from the Beijing's perspective. So that policy will continue, which means we shouldn't really see any growing of a relationship between the cross strait between Taiwan and China. But at the same time, we should be able to hold a continuing friendship with the United States. Also, this depending on who's going to be the president of the United States after November, because I mean we know theoretically, it doesn't really matter whether Biden or Trump being elected, but their strategy could be very different to Taiwan. So we should expect the 21st, the trade initiated between the United States and Taiwan to continue. We already signed a phase 1 agreement. The phase 2 agreement should be populated hopefully by later this year, again, depending on how these elections goes. And at the same time, I mean, the United States will still continue its arms sales articles to Taiwan, but because this time the DPP doesn't really hold the majority seat in the Legislative Yuan. So we do expect in some occasion, especially certain type of arms sales article could be boycotted by either KMT or either, the Taiwan People's Party, because they don't think that's a necessary purchase. So which means we will have some setback over there in terms of U.S.-Taiwan relations. But in a bigger part, all three parties should be pro-U.S. So in the bigger pictures, we shouldn't really expect a qualitative change in between U.S.-Taiwan relations. So that's from the Washington, D.C.'s perspective. But from Beijing's perspective, oftentimes people will say that, well, I mean, because DPP continues to lose, is going to continue to lose for another 4 years. The Beijing doesn't like this. I mean, the CCP doesn't like it. The Xi Jinping, of course, may not like this outcome. But in reality, it may not really be the case, because here's one of the biggest hiccup if KMT were to be elected as a president. If Hou Yu was elected as a president, because of U.S.-China competitions, Hou Yu may not be able to show any pro-China movement, because Taiwan's security is bounded by the United States, which means if Taiwan want to maintain the status quo, being able to partner with the United States is unnecessary. So in return, even though KMT were to be elected in an alternative universe, the whole East still has to be more pro-US than pro-China. And as a result, Xi Jinping may not have much maneuvers in manipulating the cross-strait relations. So we may be able to see more exchange between like tourism or between like business. But to be honest with you, the business is moving towards south. It's moving out of China. As long as this global supply chain reshuffling is still continuing, there's not much reasons for Taiwanese businessmen to go back to China. So as a result, from Beijing's perspective, maybe keep DPP in office, but not holding the majority in the Legislative Yuan is a relatively more preferable outcome, because they can use the Legislative Yuan politics to sabotage most of the actions that the Democratic Progressive Party want to initiate. And at the same time, this could show that the Taiwanese democracy is vulnerable, it's always in a stagnant, and it cannot really resolve problems, which is in the liking of Xi Jinping. So Beijing's policy toward Taiwan should be pretty much the same as Beijing's foreign policy toward Taiwan during Tsai Ing-wen's period administrations. And I don't think it will be harsher. I don't think it will be more aggressive. I think they will just come out with more surprises. Something like, changing the the airplane line closer to the median line, or running more military drill to block the islands. This will happen, but you could expect if KMT wants the election, this may not be the case, But however, Beijing would be more troublesome if KMT couldn't really deliver what China would demand. So as it turned out, I think the so-called status quo in Taiwan, I mean, in terms of US-Taiwan-China relations, will maintain. And there should be, I mean, we should expect some surprises, but nothing to be too exaggerating or something that's causing a huge turmoil in between these three countries. So I think that's 15 minutes. I should stop there for Q&A. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, I'd like to have I have to ask two questions, one each, very briefly, and then open to the Q&A. To Dr. Ho, it seems like, so you say that this is a new voters. And so I heard like Mr. Cole, who is a third, but he got actually 50% of the votes of the voters under 30 years old or something like that, right? But Taiwan, of course, is an aging society, just like other East Asian countries. So the population under 30 years old is much smaller than like other generation. So so how do you think that it seems that there is a generation gap? And then that is one of the issues in the Taiwanese democracy, I think. So how do you think? And the second, Dr. Ye is, so now this time the presidential election, like DPP candidate wins. And legislative election, KMT didn't get the majority, but plurality. So it's kind of so-called like a Han government or like a twisted government. What is the implication of the presidential party and plurality of the legislature is different? Okay, so.
Thank you. This is an excellent question. And I think I can cut short to some of my quick answer to that. And I think that so far we do not have really good statistics about the support base of the third party poll. Some would say 30%, some would say 40%. But my observation is they're definitely younger to the point that a lot of them could be maybe in the teens. So then the second observation is more educated. The third is they're more generally more middle class. And so Taiwan is one of, I think, except Korea, one of the most negative growth in population, and it's suffering shrinking of the population. And I think South Korea and Japan will be experiencing problem. And could be possible there could be shrinkage of the voter base in future. But my observation is time is really on this party side, because 4 years later, 2 years later, maybe 6 years later, this middle schoolers or teenagers will come of age. I believe that they will continue to support this middle party, not necessarily Cole, because he still have some chance to run for another election next year. But even if it's not 4 years, not next year, I'm sorry, next 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, this population will continue to grow and to support this party. And this is why my last line was, if the KMT or DPP do not reform in time to really get these young voters coming up of age to support them, and I think very likely one of them could be replaced, and the structure will be different, and that the issue space will be also different too. So this is what I will suggest. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the great questions. Implications. I think. I mean, we in the United States, minority government isn't really new to most of the audience here. So basically, you have a different party controlling the executive office and the legislative office. But in Taiwan, I think what happens is we should be able to see more conversations in between the Democratic Progressive Party and the KMT together, because by far, this is kind of a weird strategy the Taiwan People's Party is playing. They try to be the best of the best, which means they don't really care about distribution. And they don't really care about, they care about standing on the right place of the issue position. But to be honest with you, politics is compromising distribution. That's it. So the point is DPP and KMT knows this much better. And which means I think in certain bill, especially in domestic policies, they'll be able to exchange favors in between two parties to come out with some solutions, unless KMT simply just want to sabotage the DPP's government. This could also be an alternative, but we have to wait to see. And it's actually served for both parties' interests. I mean, as Dr. Ho has said about this, these two parties should be reformed. They should have reformed themselves to adapt to the new structure of the electorate in Taiwan. But telling the third party is easier than reforming yourself. So I think it may be serving better in their interest to collaborate to eliminate the Taiwan People's Party instead of reforming themselves. So we should expect that type of politics being played in legislative yuan. And if that were to be the case, then we should actually see a relatively more benign relationship between the legislative yuan and the president's office or the premier's office. And this also depends on the minister portfolios that we will see after May, because I think the Taiwanese People's Party has very firm saying that they don't want anybody from a certain factions of DPP to be serving in the office. But that's almost impossible because that faction composed now roughly about 40% of a DPP politicians. So if in that regard, actually from KMT's perspective, as long as the regional issue being taken care of, they'll be willing to cooperate because they have a stronger electoral roots in different localities. So it's better, they have to serve for the interests of the electorate. And this is pretty similar to US politics.
Old US politics. Okay, so let's open to the Q&A and discussion. Who wants to kick off? Dr. Holyfield.
Well, I have to say I'm relieved. It looks like we have nothing to worry about. This is just sort of normal politics. Maybe it's a change in the Taiwan party system, but we political scientists see these critical elections all the time, maybe not. But so why in this country are we so worried about the Taiwan Straits? Should we just all relax and not worry about this? Or are the Taiwanese people, are they sort of whistling past the graveyard here?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the outcome of the election is, of course, the composition of normal political dynamics in Taiwan as a democracy. But I mean, in regarding the security issues with China, I don't think we should be just sit back, lay over, and just wish for the best. So, I mean, the current administrations or the next administration in Taiwan, so as disregard who's being elected in the U.S. in November, I think we all cherish a very strong a very simple strategies, which is deterrence. So we have to be prepared for the worst scenario, and we have to strengthen our deterrence against China. And that's the only. I mean, I'm an international relations. There's a scholar that's the only way to stop war from happening is deterrence, is to beef up yourself. I mean, of course, people talk about, well, you should be, if you have a mutual dependency, maybe the war won't happen. But Russia and Ukraine has proven this to be false already. So I think we shouldn't really keep any wishful thinking. We should be prepared for the worst. But by preparing for the wars, that may actually reduce the likelihood of war as much as possible. And I think, I mean, and that's exactly what Taiwanese government is doing now. So over Taiwan administration, the defense expenditure has increased from 1.7% of GDP to 2.3% of GDP. And of course, because DPP doesn't really hold the majority in legislative yuan, so it's really difficult to predict whether such a trend will continue. But at least it will be keep trying by the DPP government. So let's hope for the best.
I would say that I'm not that optimistic. I hope that you don't worry too much. I hope you still get sleep at night. And number one, William Lai, compared to all the presidents, and we have the hardest job as a president. He has much smaller mandate compared to DPP's Chen or Chai, and compared to Ma, and he does not have a good relations with the Chinese, and also the I think now I have some experience with the Hong Kong and also some organizations in Taiwan, and Taiwan has most of the institutions. We have Hong Kong, China, and U.S. They are very strong, even though they are not de jure organizations. But I can see that there's a weakening of these institutions with China and Hong Kong, and U.S. could be good. But this weakening of institutions, organizational ties could show something that is not particularly easy for more negotiations going on with China side. Then we understand that under Chai and the Chen, there's still strong connections and negotiations under the table, but still doing a lot. But I can see this could be going to wane a little bit. The other one is, I think the economy is not good for all these countries, and Taiwan, China, and U.S. And there could be coming short-term impacts. But when you look at a longer-term developments, China is building edges over Taiwan. I think the advantage is getting built bit by bit, not overnight in the Taiwan, China will invade Taiwan, something like that. But you can see that China is building the edges, building the advantages, like the air territory, the air flight zone, and also is building its military bit by bit in the South China Sea. And it's still going on. It will not stop. And Taiwan will have a difficult administration, but in the meantime, facing a China building edges bit by bit. So the last thing you want to be is to too optimistic about this China, and will not invade Taiwan in soon future. But even though it's not doing next year, not doing the 2025, but you can see that the advantage is being built in a sipping and moving, maybe interesting to getting more and more influencing over this island. Yeah, that's what I observe.
Johan.
Well, thank you very much for coming to speak to us. There is an article by Bonnie Glass and a couple other scholars recently in Foreign Affairs calling for DPP to freeze the pro-independence clause in its charter. How likely do you see that being, carried out by William Lai in order to gain some sort of goodwill and to freeze the cross-strait tensions? And the second part is, what do you see as the capsizing and the 2 people got killed in Jinmen over the past week or so? What sort of implication would that be for the cross-strait relations? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the questions. First one, it would be very unlikely disregard who's serving as the chair of the DPP, or even though coincidentally to be the president of Republic of China, to change the party constitutions for DPP regarding the independent article. There's one single reason for it, because people who hold that one, I mean, there's about 1/3 of supporter of DPP who still have a deeper belief that independence could be one day achieved, which means abandoning that's constitutional article will simply ask these people to leave the party and form another party. So, I mean, in terms of in terms for the solidarity of DPP, there's no interest for them to actually change the article. Of course, they've been questioned about these independent articles multiple times. And I think their strategy is pretty obvious. They refuse to comment on this issue because strategically they can't. But of course, on the table, what they have done is they try not to provoke this article, or try not to stimulate any conversations about these independent articles as much as possible. To your second questions regarding the recent skirmish. Yeah, I think skirmish would be a better term for it. The recent skirmish in Jinmen over the past few days. This is another strategy from China, from PLA, try to eliminate or blurring the so-called the sovereignty between Taiwan and China. They always have a sovereign claim that everything in Taiwan, water, land, air, all belong to China. But I mean, over the past, they also understand that, I mean, if they actually penetrate into Taiwan's territory, that's an act of war. And Taiwan has no option but to start fighting back. So what they have tried to do is use commercial behavior or use non-military reasons to shift the balance in between the so-called the median line or the sovereign territory or territorial water in between these two nations, and which could be a dangerous move, but at the same time, which leaves Taiwan without much options, because I mean, our position is we don't want to actually attack China. But if China keep progressing, then we might actually need to rely, I mean, this is what happened in the past. We might be more reliant on the US military drills in the surrounding waters in order to help to prevent this situation from happening again. Because that's a safer side, because the United States won't have a head-to-head collisions with US Navy. But again, this comes with a cost from the US perspective. So there's a lot of conversation need to happen.
Okay, I think this is, thank you. Two questions in that. The first one is, and actually, I have a chance to meet with different parties and different representatives actually, and I was told that DPP is keeping distance with those fundamentalists who want Taiwan independence. So I know some candidates and doing itself, and they are really actually irate about DPP not doing, not only not supporting them, but also keeping them at bay in any propositions of doing independent movement. And so this is the new DPP saying that this is only care about staying in power, keep it in status quo, and that this is what the priorities are. So for the second question, I think is very much in line with what I suggest about China is still doing this, testing limits to build edges. So air territory and or maybe the South China Sea bases, they may not do it overnight, but they will do it bit by bit. And this will be one of the examples, and some incidents maybe try to test how likely or how strong the reactions of Taiwan, maybe Japan, maybe U.S. If they don't do anything, they can do another inch. They can do another inch. This is what they will do in the future. But I think we have a lot of Taiwan chambers presidents here. But there would maybe a couple of things that you can give me some size and some data. And when China is giving more and more hard times for Taiwan investors or Taiwan citizens to go to invest in China, and there could be a sign that China is ready to give up. These are the more subnational or NGO ties. And I was at the dinner of a Taiwan Strait Foundation, welcoming the observers. And one thing that I'm really worried about is actually not many observers from mainland China, which is unprecedented in the previous, compared to previous elections. There are many scholars from university in China, and this is the first time there's almost no official observer from mainland China. So indicating that second tier or maybe unofficial ties is getting less important, maybe less important to China, and they may be ready for more actions, and even to a point that fear these ties and these investments. And in the past, Taiwan investors are so important to China and industrialization, economic developments. Now, that may be a side if Taiwan investors is facing more and more difficult times, and China may be doing something. Yeah, this is.
Okay, I'd like to have to take two questions. And then Harold, yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been excellent. A number of us worry about the potential of a Chinese military move on Taiwan. And I think quite a bit about what might be in Chairman Xi's mind in the PRC. What would be the factors that might cause him to go ahead and make a military maneuver to overwhelm Taiwan? What price would PRC pay domestically and certainly internationally if he did that? And because I see the PRC, they now have the largest Navy in the world. They would like to push the United States out of the Pacific as a theater of influence for us. They are, as you say, Dr. Ko, they are making steady improvements militarily in many ways. They have their own domestic challenges, high unemployment among youth, a banking system that's very fragile, and other problems. But what would be the factors that Chairman Xi might take into account in order to justify a military move on Taiwan? And what kind of timing do you think he would look at in such calculus?
Can also take Harold's question.
With regard to the Bonnie Glaser et al. Article referenced by the gentleman earlier, the main, of course, argument of that article was that the United States and Taiwan should combine robust deterrence with effective reassurance in order to preserve the status quo, which apparently is what the people in Taiwan want. And of course, there was a lot of very strong backlash in the certain sectors of the American political science community to that proposal, saying, we cannot do anything like that. We need to unilaterally, openly declare that the time for strategic ambiguity is gone. The United States should clearly say, we will support Taiwan with military force. I was wondering what you two gentlemen think of those arguments put forth in the Glaser et al. Article, and how relevant they are to the people in Taiwan, and how a Taiwan government would deal with this, and what would be the results among the electorate if Taiwan government pursued, say, the policy of more reassurance.
You want to, yeah. Well,
Let me begin. I don't think Xi Jinping has a very set timeline. And this really depends on how you perceive Xi Jinping, because there's only one person knows what he wants to do, which is Xi Jinping, and we're all guessing. State Department is guessing, CIA is guessing, President's office is guessing, and everybody in Taiwan is guessing too. So we're all just guessing. Let me repeat that. But if Xi Jinping is not so serious about unifying with Taiwan, not so serious, meaning that this isn't really a top priority for his administrations. It's not something that he want to achieve by the end of his life. Then which means the timeline is not set. However, the war could still happen if, for example, the Xi Jinping encounter unresolvable dispute with the CCP internal politics, or the Chinese economy simply collapse through its real estate banking system or whatsoever other reasons, because the domestic pressure will be so huge that he has to divert it to a war. So that's one reason. But of course, if Xi Jinping, again, if we perceive him as he's really determined to make his name in the history, to be the one who unified the strait, then he has a timeline and he will do it when the time comes, right? But by far, we prefer not to think in that way, because his policy toward Taiwan, his policy toward the state has been shifting, especially over the past 3 months. So we think he's still rational, which means that shouldn't really be considered as his top priority. So by far, I think the likelihood of a war, it still exists. And it exists starting from 1949 to this moment, but it's not as significant as something that we need to worry about. This will happen tomorrow. And strategically, if war does occur, again, there are two different scenarios, right? So, for example, whether the United States and Japan actually intervene into the war, or they leave their hands behind and say, "This is your war. Fight for yourself." I think by most of the current calculations, the U.S. involvement is quite likely. And if that will be the case, I think the last simulation has demonstrated that we will be, if the war happens in the next few years, we will be able to destroy the Chinese Navy, and China will be isolated by the international war in trade, in finance, and at the same time, our cost is also devastating. We'll lose 2 earthquake carrier battle groups and a number of F-35s. Let's put it that way. So which means I think we still have the upper hand. And if US intervene, which means it's quite unlikely China will actually win over Taiwan. And when that happens, the CCP might disappear. It might be dissolved. So which means it's a gamble. It's a gamble for Xi Jinping. If he decided to attack, then if the United States decided to intervene, then this is the end of the Chinese Communist Party. I don't think he's gonna bet his life and the future of the party on this event. So regarding the strategic ambiguity or strategic or reassurances, I think we all have heard President Biden being mistakenly spoken 4 times that the United States will send armies to protect Taiwan. I don't think it's mistaken. It's intentionally to send a signal to China that we are prepared for it. But we just don't let you know exactly whether we're going to do it or not, because oftentimes, every time when he stated it, the State Department spokesman will come out and say, "Well, come on, our policy on Taiwan has never changed." But the question goes to, what exactly is U.S. policy on Taiwan? Because U.S. policy on Taiwan has never specified whether the United States will or will not intervene into the event of war. There's only one small articles in the Taiwan Relations Act stating that United States does not want any forces to change the life, the economy of Taiwan's people. And they didn't really follow by another sentence to say exactly what they would do if this happens. So again, the U.S. policy on Taiwan has been ambiguous all the time. And this all depends on how China signal Taiwan, and they will be responding to those signals. So I think I don't think the United States would like a complete assurances to Taiwan, because, well, the moment they say that they're going to protect Taiwan, that's the very next day China should attack. Because that's the end of opportunity for China to ever take over Taiwan. And which means I don't think the State Department want to gamble on it. Of course, if Trump would be the president, we got to think about it.
Dr. Turner's question first. I really believe that the United States must stick with the policy of ambiguity. And but bear in mind that this is a deterrence on both sides. It's not just U.S. deterring China, but China is also doing everything to deter U.S. from intervening. And as I mentioned earlier, this is it's building edges, but it's not overnight. And the Ukraine war will be a really good lesson for both big nations. I think China is learning back time. They may not do that overnight invasion or ground trips, but there could be many ways to increase its edge advantage over Taiwan Island, when making it even more and more difficult for U.S. to intervene, or the price will be much higher. So I think the question about whether Taiwan or U.S. can still resist or still deal with the China invasion. I think China, Xi Jinping is learning a big lesson from Mao. And it doesn't take like a big campaign to deal with KMT. It may do a smaller guerrilla warfare or smaller things. But it's doing a lot of patience game and waiting for this moment to come to test the limit, and whether China, either U.S. or Taiwan can react big time. And but if that is so, they would withdraw and then come back next time. They're doing this the limits testing small time. So one thing that I want to say is for Taiwan, what should we do? Taiwan must stay strong. And this is so important. The U.S. must make Taiwan strong. And if Taiwan is strong, it's also another kind of deterrent for China to pay a much higher price if really there's something called straight war happening. So that's the only thing that Taiwan can do: make military strong, economic strong, technology strong. That is the best thing Taiwan can do.
This is actually, and we can talk like forever, but time is up. Like already, like we have like a 5-minute overtime, so we will be here for next few minutes. So if you have any question, please come to see us. But thank you very much. And on Wednesday, actually, this Wednesday, we have another interesting seminar during the lunchtime with our Dr. Jim Holyfield. About immigration and refugees. I'm sure which is nothing related to election, I think. So he will speak about immigration and refugees on Wednesday at noon. So please join us at that time. But please join me for thanking two distinguished speakers. Thank you very much for coming.